Children's stories from old British and Irish legends. This is part of the World Legends series. So I found this book in a bookstore out here in Saigon in Vietnam. I'm living and working in Vietnam, just in case anyone is new to this channel. And it looked to me initially like this was a classic book. I mean, the publisher, North Parade, had a number of hardcover classic books in this section of the bookstore, and I thought this was just another classic. Not that I thought this was the original Legends, but I thought this was like a Victorian era retelling of them, like Andrew Lang or Howard Pyle or the Brothers Grimm or Roger Lancelin Green or something like that. Like a Victorian or Edwardian retelling of classic children's fairy tales. But then I got the book home and was trying to figure out what I had bought, and it was a little bit strange because the author's name doesn't seem to be listed anywhere except over in small print here on the copyright page written by J. Emmerson-Hicks. So I Googled J. Emmerson-Hicks to try and find out what classic author that was. And it turns out it's a contemporary author. She appears to have done a lot of children's work and a lot of Bible stories. She seems to go by J. Emerson or Janice Emerson or Janice Emmerson-Hicks, assuming these are all the same person. But you can tell just by looking at these pictures that these pictures look a little bit more old school, don't they? And the pictures are by Harry G. Teaker, who I believe, he's not on Wikipedia, at least I couldn't find his Wikipedia page, but I could find some information about him online. Where was it? He died 1873 to 1954. And it looks like the original book was The Wondrous Deeds of Bygone Days by M. Dorothy Belgrave. And some of the websites also credit this to, there we go, Hilda Hart. And this book apparently was published in 1934. Is that right? I don't see it now, but I remember. Oh, yeah, there we go. Originally published 1935. And, sorry, if you look at this preview, it does have some of the same stories. So this is the same artwork. The writing is similar, but different. And in some of these stories, it appears to be changed more than in others. So I was looking at one where it was just about the same. But in this one, actually, it seems to have been changed up quite a bit. So it looks like the author, J. Emmerson-Hicks, I assume at the request of the publisher, because they've got this whole series here on World Legends, took these retellings that were in the public domain and took the illustrations, which I'm assuming must have been in the public domain, and just reworked the language to make it more modern for a young audience today. And the good news is it reads very well. There are some, where is it? There are some modern colloquialisms here. For example, their leader was the mighty Fionn Mac Cumhail or Finn McCool. Now, I haven't double checked, but I'm guessing that was in the 1935 version. And where are there? There's a. Sorry, apologies. I didn't mark this book up. So there was a couple spots where the characters were talking in the modern vernacular, which must be the result of this modern edition. But I didn't mark the dialogue. But if I'm making that sound bad, it's not bad. It's rewritten in a way that sounds very natural to a modern ear, and is very natural to read. Now, these are not all of the stories. It appears that were in that Wondrous Tales of Bygone Days book. I haven't actually done a full comparison, but I just noticed there are some stories missing. But it does have a number of interesting stories. So a number of legends from Ireland, some from Scotland, a couple from Wales, and then a couple from England. Now, I really did not know anything about most of these legends before I started reading, but they do appear to be all authentic legends. So you read the legend, and then, of course, in this modern day and age, of course, you go to Wikipedia to find out, what's the story behind this. So Darmiud and Grania, for example, this is a story of two people who fall in love, but the problem is she is betrothed to the king. But she falls in love with the king's retainer, the king's loyal knight. And so, because they're in love, but she's betrothed to the king, they have to escape for their lives. And they have lots of adventures, running away and fighting until the tragic end. And by the way, I give nothing away by saying until the tragic end, because it's right here in the beginning. Now, before we begin this tragic tale. But so you read that, and then after you read it, you go to Wikipedia to find out, okay, how authentic is this? What's the real story behind this? The real legend. It turns out, as it turns out for most of these, that the retelling here very closely matches what's on Wikipedia in terms of the original legend. But Wikipedia also says that this is about the story comes from the cycle of Fionn Macumhail, or they call it like the Fane cycle, I believe. Meaning that there's a whole cycle of stories, kind of like the Arthurian cycle, only not the Arthurian cycle. It's about this Irish king, and this is just one of those stories in that cycle about this famous Irish chieftain, Fionn Macumhail. So the main legend is about this chieftain that they're running away from, and I guess this is kind of like Lancelot and Guinevere, as it were, kind of. It's a rough comparison, but you get the idea. It's their story here, but this comes from a much larger body of stories, in which the chieftain that they're fleeing from is actually the main character in those stories. And then Wikipedia says that the Fiend cycle is one of three cycles in Irish mythology. There's also I believe it was the King cycle and the Ulster cycle. The Ulster cycle, I think, comes up a little bit later. Which one was in the Ulster cycle? Beginning to forget. Maybe it'll come to me as I go on. So then the voyage of Muldoon. I'm sure I'm going to pronounce all these Irish names wrong. Again, the really far out journey, in which they encounter a number of trippy things. reminds me a little bit of those Sinbad the Sailor stories of the Odyssey. And of course, you go to Wikipedia and it says that this is inspired by voyage stories like the Odyssey. And then the Champions portion. Maybe this was the one that was from the Ulster cycle of mythology. Yeah, that would make sense. Maybe this one was from the Ulster cycle of mythology. Tyrant of the Isles. The Tyrant of the Isles, actually, was one of the few ones that I couldn't find any reference to on Wikipedia. So I Googled these names, but they just redirected back to this book, or to the original book that this one was based on, by M. Dorothy Belgrave. But then the Prince of Defeed, this one, his name is, we're into the Welsh ones here, Puel. This is an interesting one, and it says at the end that their son Perderi would go on to be as famous as his father and have many adventures. But this book is too short to tell them all. And yeah, sure enough, you go to Wikipedia, and this is a whole cycle of myths and legends about these Welsh heroes. So yeah, these are, well, you know, these are retellings made for children. So you're only getting little glimpses into what appears to be a much larger body of legends and myths. But then you go to Wikipedia a little bit to get a little bit of an overview of the mythic cycle that these take place in. So all of that maybe is a long way of saying I found this book quite enjoyable. The illustrations, even though they were for the 1935 book and are just being reprinted here, are nice. You know, I mean, this is, I'm not going to count this as hard reading. This is one of those books where the page count is inflated because the illustration takes up the whole page, right? And lots of illustrations. But in terms of just a nice, easy read with lots of fun pictures, this was a nice way to break up some of my reading projects. And I like the pictures, and I found it interesting kind of researching some of these characters or stories further on Wikipedia. So, you know, this gets a recommend from me. If you happen to come across this in your bookstore, I bought it in Vietnam. That's the price in Vietnamese dong there. 259,000 Vietnamese dong, which is about $10. But it's published by North Parade, which is in the UK. Wherever you happen to find this, if you come across it, it's a pleasant enough read.